Hi, I'm Frances Drost, a singer-songwriter and inspirational speaker, and I want to talk to you today about overcoming intimidation. As I have grown in my music career, I have had to face intimidation like I just never thought I would. And I've learned some things along the way. So I just want to share with you today some of the things that I've learned that might be helpful to you as you step out to become all that you've been created to be and to do. So what is intimidation? Intimidation comes, I believe, when you drive a stake in the ground and you step up to move out of your comfort zone. It could be you decide to sign up for a class, or you decide to change directions in your schooling or your career, or you decide to sell your house and downsize or upsize or move to a new community. You've probably heard the statement, be yourself, everyone else is taken. I love that statement, and it opens up possibility for me to just be Frances, to be me, to not compete with other singers or songwriters or piano players, but to just be Frances. And it's the same for you. Who are you? What do you love? What do you want to see accomplished in your life? Intimidation will always present itself, like I said, when you drive a stake in the ground and decide to take another step. I remember the day I was driving along Interstate 81 in Pennsylvania in my tan van, and I was listening to a motivational speaker. And after going through all of his DVDs and going through all the exercises that he gave us to do, it was time for me to step up and say out loud, what is it that I really believe I was created to do? And what do I want to do? And I remember I clearly said out loud, I want to do a big concert where everything is amazing. I want to take all of the elements of what I love, stories, lyrics, music, people, audience, and create an experience that we go through together that's amazing on every level. That's what I want to do. And something shifted in me. I drove a stake in the ground. Even though I'd been doing concerts and so forth a good part of my life, I needed to step up and recognize who I am and that that's what I love and it's okay. But that is when intimidation really started to raise its ugly head. And immediately I heard in my head, who do you think you are?
Cheerful way, grabbed my keys, headed out the door. Then I heard a voice that I've heard before. It said, who do you think you are? You'll fall fast and hard. Think you're tough, you're not good enough. Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are?
So intimidation will present itself even in physical symptoms. You'll feel it in the middle of the night when you wake up and you go, what did I do? I've just put my house on the market. Or I just signed up for a class. Who do I think I am? I'm 43 years old and I'm going to go to school? It will be sweaty palms. It can be a fast heartbeat. It can be panic attacks, anxiety. The list goes on, and it'll show up in your physical body oftentimes when you've made a decision to step out. Intimidation also presents itself in the forms of statements like, you can't do that. You're too young. You're too old. You're not educated enough. You live in the wrong place. I believe that intimidation actually challenges two areas of our life, and this is at the core of intimidation. One is it challenges your motives. It will say, why are you doing this? And it'll challenge your ability. How are you going to do this? You can't do this. Intimidation always challenges your motives and your ability. one of the biggest hurdles I've had to overcome in my life is just the sheer idea of me stepping up on stage and sharing my music with the world. I've had to overcome that feeling of, well, what are my motives? And what are my abilities? Here's some examples that I've had to deal with. You want to do this for selfish reasons, don't you? You just want people to see you and notice you. You want to be affirmed. You want people to like you. Or my ability. You can't sing very well, Francis. Compared to so-and-so, you can't even sing. You can't play the piano as well as so-and-so. You know, as you get older, your brain can't remember everything and you can't focus. So you probably should give up because you're probably going to make mistakes in front of the crowd, and that's embarrassing, and you wouldn't want to do that. It was 1986, and I was sitting in a class in Oklahoma, and we had to stand up and say what we thought our place was in the world. And I didn't know what my place was. So I took a couple days to pray, to be quiet, to reflect. And it came to me, your place is music. And over time, I began to step out and pursue music more seriously. Started writing music, started singing my songs in front of other people at the encouragement of my husband. And later, when I finally determined that a big concert was what I really wanted to do, that's where all the worlds would come together and align, all the planets would align for me. I had faced intimidation before, but not to the extent that I did when I raised the bar and said, I think after years of cultivating who I am and what I love and what I think I'm called to do, this pinpoints what I really want to do. But that also pinpointed deep intimidation that I had to work through. So how do you fight intimidation? Well, here's some ideas that I have. Number one, keep going. Once you've driven a stake in the ground and you decide this is what I want to pursue, keep going. Just get up the next day and do the next thing. Create a to-do list, create the finished, what you think the picture of finishing what you started to do would look like, and then work toward that and create a to-do list of how you get there. And then you follow it. That's how I am, at least. But you keep going. In spite of the loud screaming fears and intimidation, keep going. Another way to think of it is one step in front of the other. If you've signed up to take a class, show up the first day, show up the second day, show up the third day, show up the last day. Keep going. You're going to change it along the way. You're going to have to adjust. It's okay. Just keep going. Number two, pay attention to those haunting questions and doubts. On one hand, you're going to keep going. But on the other hand, I have learned that some of the most powerful understanding and ability or way to fight against intimidation is to actually become aware of where those intimidating thoughts are coming from. Why do I think it's vain to get up on stage and share my music? Where is that coming from? Yes, it's an enemy, but it's also something in our soul where we were probably taught something or we saw something that made us think you shouldn't do that. And so you're terrified to step out. So I have found that if I journal those haunting fears and questions, I began to be able to organize in a closet, so to speak, what is going on in my soul? What is creating this intimidation? And I uncover a whole bunch of stuff, thinking patterns that I didn't know I had. If you will actually, on one hand, keep going, keep your to-do list going, your goals, keep working toward those. But on the other hand, also evaluate those questions of intimidation, those doubts. Pay attention to them and see if you can identify exactly where they're coming from. And as I've said before, journaling is a great way to organize your emotional closet. That's how I say it. Our soul, our emotions are full of all kinds of things. And as we journal, it helps to organize those. we step back and we get a new perspective, which actually gives us empowerment to move forward. Use the doubts to carve out the real you, the core of who you are. It wasn't enough for me to just do concerts. I began to learn that I do love to dress up. I love sparkles. I love to put on a gown. I love to do classical music. I love to do pop music. I had to begin to discover who it is that I really am and what I love, because be yourself, everyone else is taken, and the power comes when you step into who you were created to be and what you were created to do, and you do it with all your heart and the way you would do it. So the first step was to keep going. When you've driven a stake in the ground and you've made up your mind, keep going. And yes, be flexible to adjust along the way, but keep going. And number 2, pay attention to those doubts and those intimidating feelings, because they are a clue to something that can actually help you begin to get free of them and walk in more courage.
Nobody sees in the depths of my soul the mysteries of me that nobody knows. Others will look at the outside of me, but only my Father can see down deep. Won't you touch me? Won't you change me? So look inside the hidden parts, reach into the depths of my heart. I open up, I let you see everything there is to me that nobody sees.
So the third way to fight intimidation is with words. Intimidation often comes in the forms of words, even if you can't see it, but you feel it inside of you. And if you'll pay attention to it, it comes in the form of words. Words are a sword, and they can either pierce you or you can turn around and use them to bring more courage and to fight intimidation. Let's take the story of King David in the book of 1 Samuel. Remember, David was chosen to be king, but he was out with his sheep, and this terrible big giant called Goliath was intimidating the children of Israel with his words. David leaves his sheep to take some food to his older brothers who are part of that army, and he hears about this giant who is threatening the army. And he says, what will be given to the person who defeats this giant? Word gets around, his older brother Eliab accuses David of being dishonest and proud. He questions his motives. David turns the situation around with his own words and answers him and stands up and says, I was simply asking a question. Later, it gets over to King Saul that David has asked what will be given to the person who fights Goliath. And King Saul hears about David, and he wants to meet this kid who has such courage. And David steps up, meets the king, says, I can slay this giant. And King Saul says, don't be ridiculous. There's no way you could go against that giant. You're just a kid. David takes the words of the king and he turns it around and he replies with words. And he says, I have killed a bear, a lion, to protect my sheep. In the little nobody sees land, I've been busy working on my faith and developing my walk with God, and I think I can take this giant. He was able to step up and counteract words that questioned his ability and his motives, and he counteracted them with his own words of truth. I am not proud and vain. You are twisting my words, he said to his older brother. I have faith and courage, and I've proven God in the land of nobody sees, were the words that he used to King Saul. Take the words that you're hearing and see how can you turn them around and use them to fight intimidation. Remember, words go both ways.
I sat in silence, then I called my dad and said, I need help, am I going mad? Every time I get back on my feet, doubt and fear say you can't compete. Who do you think you are? You fall fast and hard. You think you're tough, you're not good enough. Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? Good old dad, he was wise and quick. He said, don't let fear play that age-old trick. Remember that words can work both ways. Give it right back, look him fear in the face and say, who do you think you are? 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 I'll make this clear, you're not welcome here. Who do you think you are?
Well, every person's story is different. Every person's situation is different. But David's story intersects with my story, and I know somewhere along the way, my story is intersecting with your story. So what is it that you want to be? Who is it that you were created to be? What were you created to do? And what is keeping you from that? And I would guess that it's some kind of intimidation that can be pinpointed to words. So turn those words around and make them into a sword. When I did decide to do a big concert, I decided to make it a Christmas concert, and I called it Portraits of White. And I gathered a small orchestra. I sold tickets, and I'll never forget, 2 weeks before that show in 2014, I faced an incredible battle. I was terrified. I heard that, who do you think you are, over and over in my head. So I got real quiet and I prayed and I read the scriptures. I read words. I took in positive words and I asked God to help me. And one morning I read a verse that just completely put me at peace. And it gave me the courage to keep going. It was from 1 Corinthians 14:1. Give yourself to the gifts God has given you. And over all my life, I had heard, God has given you the gift of music. But when the Lord said that to me through his word, his written word, and said, use the gifts I have given you to proclaim truth to people at Christmas, it broke the intimidation. So I leave with you the challenge. Take the words that you're hearing and turn them around into a sword. Pay attention to the words, but keep going. And use words to fight words.
Who do you think you